Now, some of you out there like to be really aggressive when you go deer hunting, and there's a place to be aggressive, and there's several different styles of being aggressive. I want to go through each one of them. And being aggressive can be a great way to go in and shoot a big buck. But at the same time, each one of these, although they have their place, also can be really hurtful to you. So you hear a lot online of these different methods of how to go shoot a bump or how to go shoot a buck. I'm already telling the first one, which is bump and dump, but you hear these big name hunters or people that are really successful saying, you got to do it this way. This works for me. And even they, I don't think, understand why it works for them, but not 99% of all the other hunters. This works for them. They'll teach that, talk about it at seminars, when really it's not a fit for a huge percentage of hunters. And I think because people tend to hunt in their own space, never get out of that space, then that's what works for them. No different than if you caught bass in a farm pond on a certain lure, on a certain day, certain depth, certain water clarity. That doesn't necessarily translate to the Mississippi River or big water system, the Great Lakes, other lakes, ponds, rivers, or streams. It just applies to that little area, and this is very similar to that. And that first one I'm going to talk about is bump and dump. You know, what is that? Bump and dump is where you're hunting with your bow, typically. You're going into an area looking for a mature buck. You spook him out of his bedding area, and then you set up on that bedding area and wait for him to come back. Pretty cool tactic, and it does work. It works in areas where there's not a lot of cover. You can even look at a northern Ohio area where a buck simply doesn't have a lot of options, so he's more likely to come back. More likely to get spooked somewhere else, and then he just comes back. So setting up shop on him, whether it's that next morning, the next morning, you're just waiting for him to come back into that same spot. Could do that on public land where there's not a lot of hunting pressure. There's not a lot of quality bedding areas, bedding opportunities, meaning areas that aren't open timber, open pasture, open fields. I'm thinking big river bottom areas where there's not a lot of cover in general, kind of like the northern Ohio private land area where you're bumping deer waiting for them to come back. Maybe you're looking for that in a buck-rich area, a big fantasy land state where you're looking at, you're bumping this buck out of cover. There's not a lot of cover, and there's so many big bucks in the area. You don't care if it's that 200-inch down the road that's coming in. You just want one of those 5, 6-year-old bucks that are 160, 170, 180. There's people that made a career on that. Hunt that buck that comes back in because another buck's going to take his spot because there's a limitation of cover. So even if you spook that one buck and he's not coming back, another buck will come back and fill that spot. So now you know where a buck prefers to bed. You go and sit and wait for him to come back. Folks, bump and dump, pretty cool. Sounds cool. People have been using that practice for decades. But it doesn't work in 99% of the hunting areas where you actually need to preserve your hunt. For example, here, on our acreage here, that where we hunt in Wisconsin, it'd be a terrible, terrible method where if we think a buck's bedding in a certain area, the worst thing we can do is go bump him because he ain't coming back. There's too much hunting pressure. There's too many other options for cover and location. We're about a 50-50 ag area versus cover. So because of the amount of options a buck has, because of the hunting pressure, they're just not coming back. So for 99% of you out there, if you hunt in an area where it's not a buck-rich area, it's not a fantasy land state, you're hunting more Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, even portions of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Could get that down to areas of Tennessee. Kentucky's more of a fantasy land state. Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, portions of Nebraska. But if you're in some of those heavy hunting areas, you get over the northeast, get over to the southeast, South Carolina, North Carolina. You get into areas where there's a lot of hunters and there's a lot of cover. When you spook these deer, they're just not coming back. Number 2, specific deer bed hunting. This is a pretty cool one, but I've seen people that I'm hunting the, Shawnee National Forest. I hunted there for or Shawnee State Forest in Ohio. I hunted there for about 7 years. And I knew someone there, he's literally reads about hunting a specific buck bed. So they spend weekends looking for a buck bed during the summertime that they're going to come back and hunt during the fall and set up on. And that buck's going to come right back there in that spot, right? Wrong. The food source has changed so much on public land. The pressure changed so much that you can't depend on that buck being back to that same bed. Maybe a bedding area. However, when you're hunting small postage stamp size public land pieces, several hundred acres, 1,000 acres even. There's a lot of wetland. There's a lot of fields in. And you know a buck is bedding on this little island of cover, maybe a true island surrounded by water. To set up on that buck early, try to beat other hunters into that location, hard to get back to, and you wait for that buck to come back. That's a specific tactic for a very precise location. Maybe you're doing that in suburban area. You know a buck's bedding behind this house. You get in there and wait for him to come in. And because of a lack of cover and because of a lot of people around and bucks getting sandwiched into certain types of cover and habitat and certain size that's not readily available, he might be back the next day, more of a bump and dump area too, where you can get away with that. But then again, on the general area to go set up on a certain buck bed, very, very impossible or difficult. Maybe you have an island of cover in general, 20 acres, 30 acres, 50, 100, surrounded by ag land, and there's ag land for a half mile, mile or more in every direction. And you know because of wetland area, hardwoods, constructed bedding areas, travel, food, you know that if a buck's in this 80 acres, he's in this 10-acre core area right here on the corner, and you can go in and hunt over a specific bed. Those are all very, very situational, specific circumstances that doesn't happen in the real world. So very, very cool in those specific locations, but again, aggressive and very aggressive for majority out there for you. Most of these don't apply to 99%, 98% of everybody. Line of movement hunting. This is where you don't have to hunt a property or a public land area, private land, like it's a marathon. Instead, it's a sprint, meaning you're going to go into this area. You might be there for a week. I think of the hunting public guys. I love those guys. They can go into an area. They'll dissect the terrain and habitat, look at the sign. By day 3, they're setting up on a line of movement where a buck is bedding here, feeding here. You go right there in the middle of it, be very aggressive, and try to shoot that buck. And so what? If you spook them, you're off to the next state the next day. You're off to the next area. You're only in there for a few days. You know, Dylan hunts out in South Dakota for whitetails. He has several areas spread over a long, miles and miles of land that he likes to go to, and he can try to pattern them, see what current sign is, get right in on them. And if he spooks them, if he thinks he spoils the area, you can just go to another spot. But again, if you're trying to manage your hunt for a long term, the entire season, you want to hunt it in October, November, December, even October, November, or all of October, you can't afford to get right in the middle of the line and just spook deer and not worry about it and just go in and hunt. And that leads you to number 4, forget the wind. We run into a lot of clients where it's just like, hey, this is a good spot. Man, we want to get in there. We just want to forget about the wind and go hunt. And we don't have a lot of time. We want to go in the middle of the woods in our best spot. Folks, don't do it, please. Now, if it's second to last day of hunt and you see that that wind's not going to be changing, you think he's in that spot, go try to sit on him and kill him. That's where you have a time constraint. But again, if you're managing your property, you're managing your hunt, you're managing your public land spot for a month or more, then very, very poor tactic, because you go in there and again, spook him one time, he is gone. In most situations. Again, you can go back to the bump and dump thing where you go in there, he's there, you spook him out, maybe he'll come back if he has to. But if he doesn't have to, he probably won't. And it's no different than hunting and just forgetting about the wind. Folks, there's nothing you're going to use that'll cover up your scent when he's blowing at that buck. You have scent blowing at that deer, you're not going to cover that up. The parts per million of your scent that breaks down or can break down or be covered up is still prevalent enough where that buck can pick your scent out in that air, in that open area. Now, maybe you could, cover your scent up in a quality redneck blind or hunting blind. There might be some truth to that. But when it comes to open air hunting, there's just not much you can do. They can smell behind your ears. They smell, even if you spray down something, there's always portions of your body, your neck, your face, your ears, your nose that you can't cover up. You can't cover up your breath. Look at it this way. When you're hunting, are you breathing? What do you think the most strongest odor that someone can smell 6 feet away, even more than BO sometimes? Because you can talk at them and they'll smell your breath, even if it's refreshing and minty. They can still smell your breath. And so always think about that when you're hunting. Probably the strongest odor that you can send at a deer is simply your breath. And as long as you're breathing, not much you can do about it. So going in and just forgetting about the wind, yeah, if you have a time constraint, awesome. That can really, but like Dylan pointed out this morning, he brought up this point. It's kind of like you're blowing your scent in the wrong location. Well, if that buck, someone will say, I'll shoot him before he smells me. Well, what about the doe that comes through first, the fawn that comes through first, the small buck, or the army of does and fawns, the doe herd group comes through. They blow, he's gone too. He's going to hear that. They're running. They're probably running back to him that direction anyways, and you're just not going to see him. And then finally, persistent stand hunting. You're just pounding the same stand every day, looking at it like the more time I put in, less time on the couch is more, right? No. The more time you put in, every time you use that stand, the percentage of opportunity goes down with that stand. It's different if you're hunting it every week or two and you're going in at the perfect time. You have the perfect layout. You're blowing your scent to a non-deer area, leaving very little scent behind going in and out. Like we like using a limit shield. We spray down our legs. We walk in and out. We have clean trails. We don't have a lot of grass. I fully believe that you're not leaving much of a scent trail when you go in and out like that. But every time you go, there's so many deer that you spook just from them hearing you get into the stand. They hear something metallic, it might not bother a doe, fawn. They're more herd mentality creatures. They think and act alike. They're not independent thinkers. But when you have a mature buck, he hears that sound, he equates it as something negative, risk, and he doesn't come over. Just a noise. So every time you're in and out, whether it's scent you're leaving, heck, just touching your handrail going up. Buck comes by an hour after dark, smells that, he might not come around for 2, 3, 4 weeks again. You keep doing that over and over. You accidentally brush your hair against a twig, you leave your scent on that handrail. You go touch a camera nearby, they smell the camera, let alone your scent trail coming in and out. What happens if they're downwind of you one time on that stand? 100 yards away. Most of those mature bucks, you'll never know they were there. They just turn and walk away. They don't run and blow and snort most of the time. There are exceptions, but a lot of times they're gone and you didn't even know they were there. So the accumulation, every time you go in there and hunt, less likely to see them. And so when you persistently hunt, it hurts you. Now there are exceptions to that rule too. You have a rut stand. A lot of people only have rut property. They have to rely on bucks rutting and cruising to come by and shoot them, or they're not going to hunt. They're not going to get one. It might not be a good method on a certain specific target buck, but you're just looking for any buck or a mature buck. It doesn't matter if it's a certain one. So you're sitting in a stand over and over again. I can think of some really cool spots like that on public land where you go hunt a certain funnel, and over a long distance, you might be shooting a buck one day, like on a Tuesday, that Monday it was 3 miles away. You're just hunting a funnel. So if you spook one buck, another one can come by. Another one could come by after that. So time in stand on a rut funnel stand and big forest land somewhere can be very productive. So there are those exceptions, but especially when you need to manage your hunt. And I think a lot of these boil down to when you have to manage your hunt for the long term, at least a month or more, 2 weeks or more, then you can't afford to make mistakes and bump that deer, let your scent blow at him, hunt in the middle of his line, in the middle of his movement, persist, hunt the same stand over and over again and educate that deer more than you're being educated about him. A lot of times the problem is mature bucks pattern us way better than we pattern them. And that's what a lot of these are about. So while a lot of these are really cool to talk about, and a lot of people have made hunting careers of them, you take that same situation and apply it to 99% of the other whitetail areas, and they fail often. You get hooked into spending a lot of time wasting time on this, when really learn that there's no one method that applies everywhere other than being hard and making sure when you get in and out that the deer herd you're hunting doesn't know that you're even in the woods. And then these pieces of aggressive hunting strategy, they become a part of your hunt and not the hunt. They become a part of your bag of tricks. They become a part of your background, your experience as a hunter overall. And when you learn why an actual strategy works, or why a habitat feature works, one location, not the other, that's when you really learn. That's when you become a smart hunter. But if you do the same thing all the time, everywhere, in every whitetail piece of habitat, public and private land, you're not a very good hunter. You got to branch out. Put these all in your bag of tricks for a rainy day. Know when they apply, and they can pay off huge. And otherwise, hunt smart. Make sure the deer don't know you're hunting. Hunt in and out. Pick the best weather days. try to cheat towards bedding area stands or bedding movement stands in the morning, afternoon food source stands, kind of in between during the middle of the day if you're going to sit all day. And you'll be on target for great hunting season every season. I appreciate you guys watching the YouTube channel, but I don't know if everyone knows everything that we have to offer, whether it's on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, our website, or WHS Wildlife Blends, our seed company. Also Instagram you can check out. I'm very active on Instagram, putting strategies on there, photos of what we do every day. Much more active there than Facebook. But our seed, web classes, books, clients, articles. I have over 600 articles on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, everything whitetail strategy. Of course, we have hats on there, and then make sure to check us out on Instagram again. But lots of stuff to offer. We're always coming out with new things, and this isn't the end of it. We have more things coming soon. Make sure to check us out.